Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today's guest is an AuDHD mental health counselor who has faced incredible challenges from surviving sexual abuse to being told they were too disabled to succeed. Through it all, they forged a path of resilience and authenticity, and their clients thrive because they bring full, unapologetic self to their work. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's learn more about them. See you there.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping out the.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Kroy Ryder. Welcome to the show, Kroy.
Thank you.
So why don't you start off with, why don't we tell me a little bit about yourself as much as you want to tell me?
Okay. Always a tricky question because I can talk and then
Mhm.
talk too much or talk too little. So I guess the first thing obviously is I'm autistic. I'm ADHD. I also have dyslexia. I'm a mental health counselor in the UK. Um, yeah, I had difficulties, kind of figuring out who I was, where things happen, and why I can do certain things and why other things are difficult. Um, yeah, that's I come from a very small village, so things happen. Um, as they say, if you get a haircut, all the net curtains twitch. So autism was never a word. So yeah, and like I say, I come from a large family. Family was important. I'll emphasize on the word was there. We might get into that later. Yeah. What else would you like to know?
So let's rewind a bit. When did you start to realize your brain wasn't exactly following the default settings? Was it a light bulb moment or more of a slow, wait a minute, this isn't how everyone else is kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess maybe kind of primary school. I think I kind of knew I was different than everybody else. I kind of remember kind of saying to some people and thinking to myself about, there's got to be more to life than this. There's a quote in a Disney film that says, I think it's in Beauty and the Beast. Belle says there must be more than this provincial life. And I kind of never fitted with anybody. I personally thought it was sexuality. When I figured that out, I kind of found out actually that wasn't it. I still felt different, still didn't fit in. Never viewed, never seen. I have this, I guess, people call it like the Harry Potter cloak effect, the invisibility. I can tell people there's a pint of milk in the fridge. People will still go and check. It's like I'm not there. So it was kind of a slow burner, I think, is kind of the answer there.
All right. Now, before you got your diagnosis, did you kind of feel like you were on the outside looking in, kind of like, why am I different than everybody else? And then when you got your diagnosis, did you kind of feel like you were on the inside looking out, thinking, oh, this explains everything now. This is that one moment that says, this explains why I do the things I do and why people view me differently.
Mhm. Yeah, I think before I got the diagnosis, I was just viewed as the shy kind of quiet one.
Hmm.
Obviously, coming from a large family, it was, we had loud ones, we had people that were always getting into trouble. So it was much easier for me to go under the radar and not be viewed at all. So I think, we even had a speech therapist come in for my brother. She never viewed me. Not that I had trouble speaking, but nobody ever viewed me. In high school, I had issues. Nobody noticed. So I just thought this was normal. I felt I was, to be honest, I was the weird kid. I was the strange one. I didn't understand friendships. How were people getting friendships? I didn't understand any of that. So when I got the diagnosis, yes, it definitely changed things. I felt very seen, very validated, you know. So when I was thinking about getting the diagnosis, My kind of half sister had kind of talked to me about it a little bit, and I started my journey to become a counselor. And I had to go around and look around the college to start with because I knew I was very anxious. I thought it was anxiety. Had medication for anxiety, as so many of us do. Learned that it wasn't that. And when I spoke to one of the support workers there who showed us around, I said, "Well, I'm thinking I might be autistic." And she looked at me and said, "It just shines out of you." And I remember that was a changing moment for me. I felt quite angry at the same time as vulnerable that somebody had reached in and kind of seen my soul almost and gone, "I see you. I'm here. I'm hearing you." So, yeah, diagnosis after then definitely changed everything.
I mean, that's kind of almost like my story of my parents never knew why I was the way I was. I mean, there were stories of, oh, he used to take apart his father's tools to see how they work, and they didn't understand how my brain was working until one day we had family members who one was a psychiatrist, one was a psychologist, one was a family lawyer, and even my own doctor all said, I believe Reed has traits of high functioning autism. And it was kind of like this aha moment to my family of, okay, this explains a lot. And then they told me, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this validates why I did why I do and why people view me differently. And that brings me to a question of, do you have ADHD as well? Do you feel at times your ADHD and your autism kind of cancel each other out? One overrides the other, like you get more forgetful at times or you get more hyper focused at times. What does it feel? How do you go deal with that?
Yeah, so I kind of describe it as two people. Um, they do not play well together. Okay. I don't really like chaos, but I like my chaos.
Hmm.
I don't like a mess. So it's almost like I say one half of me can be cleaning the house. So that's my autistic side, everything nice and neat and tidy. At the same time, the other hand is messing it up as I go round. So it's very much a seesaw effect,
Hmm.
you know, and it is strange. And then you add on to that the dyslexia.
Hmm.
Yeah, I forget things. I tell my clients I'm only human. I
Yep.
forget clients, counselors will tell you they don't, but we do. We forget clients. Somehow I can write notes and, post-it notes, reminders. I will leave the office, go and do something, and somehow, which I must put CCTV up for this, somehow I sneak back in and do something to the office and rearrange stuff. I have no memory of doing that. So it's almost like it is definitely two people, and it is hard because, like, I have a really good memory for clients' names and things like that. But ask me what I did yesterday, I have no memory. I have no clue of that. So, yeah, it does get difficult at times.
I mean, people don't realize what we battle with when you got both. It's one half our mind craves routine, and then on the other half, our mind can't stand routine and can't stand using schedulers. And you got people saying, why don't you use a calendar? Why don't you use a clipboard with charts and things to do? And it's like, do you understand how our brain works even? There are two halves. One understands it and can work with it, but the other is like, no, I can't stand to look at a routine because my mind is chaos.
Hmm. Yeah. I've tried online calendars. They don't work for me. I use a paper diary. It's more in control.
Mhm.
Often I'll hear people say when we talk about ADHD diagnosis that there's just too much paperwork to fill in to get the diagnosis,
Oh,
especially in the UK. And it's like people then go, but don't the people realize who are trying to assess us realize that's the very reason we're here because we can't function like that. We have difficulties filling in lots of paperwork, remembering details and things like that. So, yeah, it's difficult.
I mean, that brings me up to it. It brings me up to a great story. Way back when I had applied to work for the government as a government job, working for the immigration office. And As you know, the government likes to know everything about your life, at least 10 years back. So when I got this application form, I'm looking at it. I'm like, you want me to know, you want to know where I was 10 years ago from now? I don't even remember what I ate last yesterday for lunch. How am I supposed to know where I was 10 years ago and
Yeah,
what I was doing? It's like, how do you expect me to memorize all that?
yeah, yeah. There's lots of, people will often say, do you remember where you were when? And it's like, no, I mean, I have core memories, of course I do. I
Hmm.
have pivotal things that stand out.
Hmm.
But then people don't understand that, with ADHD, I have like thousands of thoughts running through my head. Like
Yep.
right now, it's like a revolving door just spinning around with all these thoughts, and trying to pin one of them down is
Hmm.
really hard,
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you lose things.
hmm I mean, it's like it's like when I was at school and it was time for the exams. It's like, how do you can put me in my revision class to go over all this material, but when it came time to the exams, it's like I got a million things still going through my head. And how do you expect me to pull all this information I learned through a year
Yeah.
and remember everything you taught me? It's not. It's hard. It's
Mm,
easier for the neurotypicals because they don't have a million different thoughts going through their head at one time.
yeah.
I mean, the best way to put it is we have a tiny little throughput of information coming into us. Neurotypicals have a bigger throughput so they can get all that information in.
Mm,
So, and the problem is if we don't use that knowledge, we lose it or it gets pushed back.
yeah. Yeah. I remember, exams were just awful. Just like you said, trying to remember information from like spread out over a year.
Hmm.
It's not easy. And then plus sitting in an environment where there's lots of noise and lots of people, and maybe the smell's not right, like we said, noise levels, things like that. People using their, pencils make a loud noise when there's
Yeah.
like 30 of them going off at once, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like I have this big issue. I don't know if everyone has this, but you can put me into a room with an accommodation room for those of us who need accommodations, who are all just who have disabilities. And the problem is the minute you sit me down, you still have 10 other people in that room clicking on a computer. You got
Mm,
the clock, you can hear the clock clicking because the room is quieter. And then you get that thought the minute you see someone get up and hand in their paper.
yeah.
For me, it's that the anxiety kicks up a notch. And the one thought that has always been with me when I was in grammar school is, I don't want to be the last one in here. And I don't think to myself, these other kids are taking different tests. They're not taking the same test as me.
Mm,
So my mind just races and I start going through, just quickly answering all these questions down, writing them down and handing it in and getting out of there.
yeah. Yeah. I get it. Being the last person in a room, we do kind of judge ourselves on how everyone else is doing, and
Hmm.
why have they just turned the page over and we're still trying to figure out what the question is,
Hmm.
and trying to recall that memory. It's like you said about clocks. Yeah, that's the worst thing for me. I hate ticking clocks. I don't have them in the house. I just have digital ones. And
Hmm.
even in college, I asked for the clock to be removed. Really nice tutor removed it. Another tutor put it back. So we ended up with two. So yeah, it was like it was pointless, but yeah, it is difficult.
Now, has there been a time you finally felt seen, like someone actually got how your brain works? And was there a moment that stuck with you?
Yeah, I think going back to kind of what I said before, that support lady, her name was Laura. I always remember her, just kind of validating me, and going, yeah, I see you, and it shines out of you. And for the first time, recognizing that actually I was right. There was more. That there's more to me. I wasn't just the shy, quiet one that kind of didn't understand why everybody else was just functioning.
Mm.
How were they doing that? Why are people able to even just take their car to the garage and know where to go? I don't get that. I just stand there and go, okay, I don't know how to do this. So that was most probably the most pivotal moment and has kind of helped me in my work. I always call it kind of unlocked something within me. I can see autism, ADHD in other people now. And actually, during that kind of college year, one of my peers, I helped her discover that she was ADHD as well. And when you know what you're looking for, we always joke about it because she came in with so many bags. Like we joke about a bag within a bag and another bag. When she arrived, you knew she had arrived. She came with everything, you know, and just little strange little oddities, as I call them, that she did. And it was like, yeah. And now she's diagnosed with ADHD as well. So it's intriguing also how we kind of flock together, how we
Yes.
find our people. So yeah, that was most probably the changing moment for me.
I mean that's an interesting way of putting it because a lot of the clients guests I've had on my show who've been married, I go, so is your husband or your wife one or the other? And she's like, yeah. Or they're like, yeah, it is. I have autism and they have ADHD, or I have ADHD and they're autistic. It's like we kind of are drawn to each other and we know when we talk with somebody, oh, you gotta be autistic or you gotta have ADHD. We have this kind of sense about people that we're able to pick up the traits that we have in ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my partner is, as far as I'm aware, neurotypical, um, but understands. I mean, he's been really understanding throughout it all. As I say, not many partners kind of, we don't ask for this. It's something that kind of happened along the way. But yeah, very supportive, but it's interesting. I mean, I definitely work with couples and that who are, maybe one's autistic, one's ADHD, and it gets complicated, but it all makes for interesting fun along the way.
Now, do you have any sensory issues? What kind of sensory issues do you have?
Okay, so hypersensitive to noise,
Hmm.
um, definitely ticking clocks. Um, I always say if I was in Times Square on kind of New Year's Eve, I would still hear a fly buzzing.
Hmm.
I can hear a pin drop. Always have done. Always wondered what it was. I have a great ability at finding things for some reason. If something's lost, I can kind of trace it back. Taste is not a great one. So certain things that I can eat something and then kind of just go off it halfway through actually chewing it. But I would say noise is the worst sensitivity one that I have.
I mean, that's funny you mentioned about being able to hear a fly buzz in Times Square during New Year's Eve because there's a story about me. We were in the zoo in the busy part and it's loud and noisy and there's a lot of commotion going on. I was able to hear my mother's phone ring in her purse.
Hmm.
I would just go, Mom, your phone's ringing. She's like, oh, I didn't even hear it. I'm like, she's like, you heard it? And I'm like, yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, are there any assumptions people make about being AUDHD or dyslexic that just make you want to think this person knows nothing?
Yeah. So some people will kind of think that you're not smart,
Hmm.
that you can't do certain things. That certainly some of the weird things are things like where you can't drive, you can't be sociable. That's usually the first thing I get is, well, you're not sociable. You can't go out, you can't be around people, you know. I do have people that call me, unfortunately, I will use the word they call me retard.
Oh,
That is
I hate that
something
word.
yeah, something that yeah, I'm anything but, that's why I do what I do. I'm very smart, most of the people I meet with autism or ADHD are very intelligent in high paid jobs. We can do it all. We just do it a bit differently. I like to think about, I'm not bothered about coloring inside the box. I want to color outside the box. I'm more interested in what's on the outside, and yeah, there are certain things that I will experience meltdowns and shutdowns now and again. That was a new thing when that first happened in college. That was a very weird experience. I had no idea what was happening because when you get the diagnosis, you're kind of then shown the door. As we were talking before the show, you don't get no kind of manual. There's no, like confetti cannons going off. There's no membership card. It is just there's the diagnosis, go and figure it out yourself. So it's hard. I mean, when I was in college learning to do counseling, I actually asked my tutor and I actually said, how do I do this? How do I bring, at that point, I just knew about the autism. How do I bring autism into the contract? How do I let a client know that I'm different? You know, his words were, go figure it out yourself. That was it. And I was like, that's not helpful. But I mean, I did. I figured it out. I'm very honest with my clients. I let them know I'm human. I have flaws. I do things differently. I'm gonna use a notepad and pen. My office, I work from home. My office is full of fidget toys. It's different, and I don't wear a shirt and tie. I'm just very casual. And I think that's why people like it because it's much better to have someone sitting in front of you who gets you rather than waving a piece of paper at you saying, well, I've done a course and I know how you work. So yeah,
I mean, that reminds me of a great quote by somebody by Dr. Temple Grandin, which is, "We're not less, we're different."
yeah,
I mean, the phrase he said, "You don't like coloring inside the box, you like coloring outside the box," is a great example of how our minds think. We think more outside of the box.
mm,
That's why when you take one neurotypical and one neurodivergent person, you put them together and give them the same problem, the neurotypical will come up with one answer to that problem, where we will see outside of that problem and come up with several different answers to that problem because we see several different scenarios and how that problem could be solved.
mm, yeah. It's just looking at things from a different perspective. I've had clients that will answer a question in a certain way, and you know, I can't argue with them.
No.
It's like, how do I argue? They've answered the question in the way that I would kind of expect them to, but sometimes you need a bit more when you're doing counseling. But I just have to say to them, I can't argue with you. You've literally given me the answer that's needed. So yeah, it's interesting how we work. And I always say we would survive longest in the woods. If we got lost in the woods, we would definitely survive longest.
I mean, yes, we would. I mean, minus the panic attack first, think of our minds going into high anxiety, thinking, "Oh shit, we're lost. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know how to navigate." To hang on, let's calm down. Let's figure out which way the sun is setting, and figure out that, and then figure out, okay, which way to head from that point on. We
Yeah.
look at things differently than the world. We see things differently. There have been people I've talked to said their son, who's autistic, sees patterns in trees and how the
Mm,
trees are down their street. And there are people who see patterns in clouds, and people who are great with logic.
yeah.
What people don't realize is there's two types of autism in the world, or ways we think. There's those who are logical, who make great programmers, and then there are those who are more creative, who do more creative jobs, like
Yeah.
designers.
Yeah. And I think with my kind of work that I do, patterns definitely come into it.
Mhm.
I often kind of say to clients that when they come in, I'm able to see a word in my mind that's kind of it's fuzzy. And as we get through the sessions, that word becomes more clearer, you know.
Mm,
And it's kind of like just putting a jigsaw puzzle together, you know, and then I figure it out and it's like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And lots of clients will say, but I've had counseling before and nobody kind of got to that point. And I'm like, because I'm looking outside the box.
hmm
Not, I'm not always, this sounds quite harsh to some people, but I'm not always interested in what clients are talking about or what they're saying. I'm
hmm
interested in what they're not saying. I call it the Hansel and Gretel effect, where they're kind of leading the breadcrumbs to, and sometimes you have to be brave enough to say it, you know, and that opens up so many doors with them.
I bet you, I mean, you've got a lot of clients who are probably neurodivergent and you probably connect with on a level they've never had
Hmm.
someone connect with them on that level, and it validates them. And that's what makes you a good counselor is the
Yeah.
fact that you are connecting on a higher level, a much different level than most counselors do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it goes back to, like we said before, having somebody sitting in front of you waving a piece of paper and saying, I've done a couple of weeks course and yeah, that's great. I mean, I've done an awareness course, an autism awareness course, and I can tell you it was not autistically friendly in any shape or
No.
form. I did not know how people were getting the answers that they were getting. You know, it certainly didn't make any sense to me. And it, you know, the difference between, and this is kind of a very unique take at things, and this is how I think, you know, it can happen that a client can go to, a person can go to an average counselor, let's put it that way, and say, I don't like eating crisps, you know.
hmm
That counselor might take the stance of, oh gosh, maybe this person's got an eating disorder. Now, I don't rule that out, but if we're looking at a neurodivergent person, I kind of go, do you not like the sound they make? Because they're noisy. Crisps are very noisy when you're eating them, you know. So it's
Here,
again,
and
like you said, looking at that different viewpoint.
yeah, and you hear it crunching in your ears, and people don't realize you hear yourself eat.
Yeah.
And that noise to a normal person is just normal, but to somebody who's more sensitive to noise, it becomes deafening.
Yes, yes, definitely. You know, and I think that's why with certain foods and that, like apples are quite hard. I can hear them, you know, and it's just looking at the way things sound and the senses, you know, obviously the basic five senses do get in the way a lot of the time.
Mhm. Now, how do you cope with a lot of things? Have you come up with your own coping strategies?
Okay. So first thing is fidget toys. I have a fidget toy in my hand right now. That's kind of what I use a lot of the times. Fidget toys, kind of talking about it, learning the language. You know, I've done a lot of learning and researching on it, finding different podcasts like yourself, the Aspie World. I've watched that a lot of the times. You know,
He is, I have to interrupt you for a minute. He is like one of my best friends.
wow. Yeah.
Dan is a true lifesaver. He helped me so much understand the autism world.
Yeah. You know, I watch things like that. There's a couple who do, I think it's Rich and Rocks, and they do ADHD Love, and just the way she puts the fun in it. It's
hmm
not, you know, I don't want to watch some technical video on, you know, why I do something. I want to watch something, you know, my attention span is not great as it is. So it needs to be something that's kind of fun, easygoing, you know, and makes it more light-hearted, you know, and then that
Yeah.
way I understand it. So yeah, lots of fidget toys, lots of education, lots of talking about it. Like I say, didn't have a clue what meltdowns and shutdowns were when they first happened. Had no idea what was happening. Just knew I did not want anybody around me. I didn't want anybody touching me. I didn't understand it. So now I understand it a lot more. The spoon theory has helped a lot. That really opened
Mhm.
my eyes, and I use that a lot in my work. I think just understanding how we are and understanding that, yes, I'm autistic and ADHD and dyslexic, and yes, other people are as well. we have similar things, but equally, I'm individual. I'm unique in how I see things and how I function, So it's looking at those things because most people will go, "Ah, yeah, you're autistic. Oh, yeah, do you know so and so? You're the same as them." And you think, "Yeah, I might have similar things, but I'm not entirely the same, So yeah, that's kind of how I get through it.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about executive dysfunction, sensory overload, or just how the brain goes on vacation sometimes. How do you handle something like your job that requires a lot of emotional regulation with everything else that goes on? How do you handle that executive dysfunction?
Yeah. So my immediate autism brain wants to say strutting down the hallway to music. That kind of helps a lot of the time. Um, I'm honest, I have brain fog a lot of the times with clients, and I will just tell them exactly what's happening, that I'm thinking of a word, give me a few minutes, I'm going to get it, and I explain the revolving door with all the thoughts coming at you, and how that works. So I'm just really honest with them. I take time for myself. Like I say, music is a great thing. I
Hmm.
will say sometimes I get into a little bit of what we call in the UK doom scrolling, with reels on Facebook and
Hmm.
Instagram.
I get there.
Yeah, I just kind of like I don't really watch too much TV because I'm able to figure out what's happening very quickly. Um, and I don't kind of like the psychology of it. So that's kind of changed my brain a little bit. So sometimes I call like with the doom scrolling, it's kind of just dulling down my brain a little bit.
Hmm.
And it gives it that little bit of, as you said, a holiday.
Yeah.
It gives me so I don't have to think. So things like I've recently stumbled across something called Tiny Nugget, and the Tiny Chef. Things like that just amuse me and keep my brain active for a little while. And then I can go back and kind of focus on the clients. But
Mhm.
yeah, if it happens, if I lose track, if I've got another ADHD client in front of me, I will tell them we need to be very time boundaried because we will go over time. And I'm not the average counselor. I don't just go 50 minutes, that's you out the door. You know, we go over, we talk, we enjoy things, we laugh, we cry, we joke together. I'm just being me. And that
Mhm.
that is something I was scared of to start with. But I've come to recognize that actually the neurotypicals have so many things on offer to them. There's enough counselors for them. There's not enough counselors for people like me. I don't
Mhm.
have a choice. And maybe in the UK, maybe there's about 300 of us. There's not many. So it's finding where you belong
Mhm.
and just being honest with yourself, who you are.
I mean, you're right on the nose when you said there aren't many out there that help those of us who are neurodivergent.
Mm.
But the great thing is there are more coming out nowadays. I mean, than there were back in the day. There
Yeah.
are more life coaches for those of us who are neurodivergent. More therapists are being able to take and understand those clients who are neurodivergent. And now there are more therapists who are able to give the test, the
Yeah.
assessment, which is great because back in the day, it was a very slim handful to almost none. You
Mm.
literally have to seek out a therapist who actually gives the autism test.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, obviously, recently, as you may have seen in the news, people have been saying we're overdiagnosing. And it's like,
No.
actually, no, we're just recognizing it more. I've helped people from a young age right into their 70s recognize it. And I love nothing more. I don't diagnose people, I help them on their way to it. And I love nothing more when I get a nice letter or a nice email that says, just to let you know, I've gone on and actually, yes, I've got a full diagnosis. And I think, wow, what a difference. That person can now go off and live their life the way they should
Mhm.
do, So that's brilliant.
I mean, what's amazing is the number of guests I've had on my show who are married with kids, when they go to get their child diagnosed, if all of a sudden they're sitting there and they're listening to the therapist list all the traits that their child has, and they're going, "Oh, I have this. Oh, I have that. I have that. I have
Mm.
that." And they go to the therapist and they go, "Do you think I have the same thing he or she got?" And they go, "Most definitely." That's because parents didn't realize that they passed that on to their child. So now they get diagnosed. So more, like you said, more and more people are getting diagnosed.
Yeah, yeah. And it's nice to see. I love it. I think helping people figure out, how they are, and like I say, sometimes I'll say to some clients, by the way, do you know that I can hear electricity? And they're like, oh my gosh, I can as well. And you're like, well, let's talk about that.
Mm,
Because sometimes we sit there and go, but can't everyone do that? I thought, before diagnosis, I thought everyone was a little bit strange and quiet like me. I thought nobody understood friendships,
mhm,
but turns out that people do, people when I kind of sit and I'll watch people. People talk about when did you realize that you kind of had a gift within autism? What's your kind of focus? I couldn't figure it out for ages, but I've come to realize that my hyper focus is people watching.
mm,
Watch people. If I'm sitting in a cafe, I'll watch how people interact. What are they ordering? How did they do that? And I was talking to someone the other day about when we're in a room of a large group of people, how for me, I will look to mimic someone. And if
mm,
there's a large group of people, I almost go into overload because I don't know who to then mimic. I
mm.
don't know how to act.
I mean, that's so interesting because when I was in school in the UK, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I started mimicking the accent.
Mm,
And no one thought to bring it up to me or anything until one day I had a fellow classmate of mine just go, "Are you mimicking me?" I'm like, "No, it just happens naturally. It's something I can't explain." And as I went from country to country when I traveled, all of a sudden I started picking up that accent and then another accent. And it's like, why am I doing this? I'm not doing it purposely.
yeah.
It's kind of like my mind saying, let's mimic this accent to kind of blend in with so people don't think I'm a foreigner.
Yeah. And I get that. When you're saying that, I was talking to a client before telling them that I'm going on a podcast and how nervous I was. And I was like, I have this thing where I mimic people. And what if I start mimicking? And they were just like, just be honest. And you talking there about kind of accents.
Hmm.
I've heard the phrase kind of the chameleon effect, where we try to fit in because we don't want to be different. So why not with voices and different sounds and that? Why wouldn't we try and fit in? Because standing out is not always a great thing. So yeah, I get that thing of mimicking accents. I've done it quite a lot. So believe it or not, I'm actually from Norfolk. And there's always a common thing about people sounding like they kind of talk about tractors and stuff like that. I don't sound like that. I sound very different because I've been in very different places and I've picked up the accent very quickly. And like you said, you get people kind of looking at you and going, are you trying to be funny? And it's like, I'm not even aware I'm doing it. It's just
Um,
happening.
that's exactly how I felt. I mean, it just happens, and it's like, why? And it's
Mm,
just unexplainable to people. It's something we do as the neurodivergent.
yeah. Yeah.
Now, you're a mental health counselor, which I find is an incredible thing because more and more people out there need somebody to help with their mental health. Now, my question to you is being neurodivergent shape the way you approach therapy and connect with your clients?
Yes, is the definite answer to that. Is yes, 100%. It definitely does. I connect, like you said before, on a different level. I'm maybe more honest than sometimes maybe I should be. But I will let clients know that right from the very start. I will let clients know who I am, how I do things. I will talk about my own life where it's going to help them. Like I said, we'll laugh, we'll cry together. I'll tell them I've got brain fog, but Yeah, I'm able to connect with them, and now kind of more niching down and working with neurodivergent people, that just helps them. They feel so comfortable and at ease because so some therapists, when you go to a therapist, they don't bother to show you the room. They kind of just take you in, sit down, and start. I will talk about the room. I will introduce the fidget toys that are on, they're open, they're on the table, they're everywhere in the room. You can't miss them. I have things like Lego flowers in the room. So I'm thinking about what I put in the room. And what you see within the room is how my brain works, and people like that. They like that time taken to just come, have a look around the room, have a chat. I even do video game therapy. I will find a way to connect with most people.
Mm.
If they allow me to, I will go as far as I need to with them and help them, you know.
Now, what do you wish more therapists would understand when working with those of us who are neurodivergent?
Oh gosh. Okay. So definitely have for the room part, I would say definitely have fidget toys out on the table, something to fidget with, but
Hmm.
don't just leave them sitting there. Pick one up, invite us to use it, use it yourself because stimming is that kind of word where people go, oh gosh, that's only autistic people that do that. No, we all do it. So be honest about it. Don't make it a dirty word almost, help us, you know, take time and don't assume that we always understand what you're talking about because we don't. There's sometimes where I can be facing someone and somebody says something, and all I hear is a foreign language. And I do not understand a word of what that person has said, So take your time with us. Don't be afraid of us, and don't. The one thing that I always get is people yelling at me like I'm deaf. I'm not deaf. I can hear what's going on. I have difficulties. Talk to me about it. So don't just assume when people, it's that saying of once you've met one autistic person, that's all you've met is one.
Hmm.
Don't assume you know me from maybe another person that you've met, find out how I work. What are my difficulties? If you've got anything in the room like a ticking clock, make sure it can be removed. Make sure it's easily removable because otherwise I'm going to focus more on that than anything else, So I guess the short answer is ask me, talk to me, get to know me.
Now, how do you make your place safe, emotionally and physically? Feel safe and inclusive for clients who may have been wired a bit differently?
Okay. So again, I talk to them. We have meetings beforehand. I will ask them what they need, let them know that they can come early, look around the room, introduce them to the room. Everything in my room is removable. I will take any, pictures that are on the wall. They're just on hooks. I can take them off. I can change the picture even down to, so I do change my hair color now and again. I'll let clients know if I've changed it. I talk about it, bring it to the room because change is huge. You know, I've
Mm.
had clients that have had long hair and chopped it all off, and I've had to say something because I've sat there and gone, I don't know if I recognize this person sitting in front of me. So change is a massive thing. So it's just accepting the person for who they are, and if they kind of take to me, I'll take to them. I'll embrace who they are.
Now, have you ever had one of those like full circle moments where your lived experiences helped a client in a way no amount of training ever could?
Gosh. So I guess it's just talking to people and figuring out when they say things like, they can't focus on tasks and things like that. So helping them recognize that maybe autism or ADHD fits with them, and like I say, it's always so nice when you get those letters and emails that say, I've now been fully diagnosed and thank you so much. Just accepting people like and getting it within maybe the first or second session and just saying what maybe some other counselors are afraid to say. My sometimes my mouth just goes ahead of me and I just say stuff, but it lands and it works and I see people. because of seeing the patterns and the routines, So I think I can link it back to that lady seeing me and going, it shines out of you, and I don't know what happened on that day, but it certainly awakened something in me.
Now let's go a little deeper for a minute. What does burnout look like for you, and how do you catch it before it wipes you out?
Okay. So burnout. I kind of, what I've done is I've watched and listened to other counselors, and my own counselor that I had when I was in placement
Hmm.
uh, introduced me to working 6 weeks on and 1 week off. So I'm aware that that's what I do because of what we hear can be very difficult to listen to, things from suicide to abuse. I also have supervision, which is a requirement. So that really helps. I know when I need it, and I'm not afraid to call him and say, do you know what? I just need to chat about this. So regulate myself as much as I can. Exercise for the ADHD. That's something that I don't kind of interrupt those sessions. Walking in the evening, that helps me just to clear my mind. And like I say, I know some people don't like doom scrolling, but kind of scrolling for me, it kind of just numbs me a little bit. And I don't have to focus on anything but what's in front of me. So I try to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, because if I don't work and I don't function, then I can't see the clients.
Hmm. Now, has there been a moment in your life that makes you step back and go, wow, I needed to hear that?
Hmm.
Or has there been a client that said something to you that made you think, wow, that's something I didn't know?
That's difficult because there's lots of little bits that you get from clients, and I guess what I get from clients is validation,
Mm.
when they kind of say, wow, you've really helped me, like within one session, or within a couple of sessions, you've kind of helped me understand myself, and clients don't always understand that by talking to them, they help me as well. I guess
Mhm.
one standout one was kind of understanding grief, and that kind of helped me unlock my kind of grief and why I felt a certain way and why I felt stuck. So, there's clients out there that you really kind of wish that you could go, thank thank you for letting me know that. And I guess again, just having good friends around me, and telling me that I can do these things and I'm capable. I'm now learning psychology. Didn't see that route coming at all,
Mhm.
but sometimes the universe just pushes you in ways that you should have found for yourself. But yeah, I think there's lots of little things along the way.
All right. Rapid fire question. What's one myth about neurodivergence you'd love just to toss in the bin?
Oh, God, there's so many of them. I guess the number one thing that kind of comes to me is that we're all the same, you
Mhm.
know, that kind of common thing that people go, oh, so you must know so and so down the street, or do you know this person? And it's like, no, or someone will know someone that does something and say, oh, well, so you do that, do you? So I think that that's the common myth that I would want to throw away.
All right. Then pull a question from my other show. If you could talk to your younger self about your diagnosis now or struggling, what would you say to him?
Gosh, okay, it's gonna be worth it. You will be seen, you will be validated. There definitely is more. There's more to life, and you're going to go on to help a lot of people, and this is just the start of it. And the struggles are what are going to help you. Observe those people, observe those struggles, and they're going to be used to your advantage in the end.
Right. And on the lighter side, what's something you love about being neurodivergent? Any quirks you've come to see as a secret superpower?
Uh, this is quite fun. I mean, I guess I love the fidget toys. I love the way I just think differently. the way that I can, my partner calls it monologuing. So I do info dump at the end of the evening. But I like it. I love so much about being neurodivergent. I guess I love it all. It's fun, it's quirky, it's me, you know.
Now, how do you define success or healing, especially in a world that seems allergic to flexibility?
Gosh. Okay. So I guess it's just coming to terms with who you are, and accepting yourself and not being afraid to be a little bit different because we all are in some way where we all have our different things going on. And it's just accepting that and, turning around and giving it a big hug and saying, okay, you are part of me. Sometimes we have to accept the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Mhm.
and we all get anxious sometimes. People hear the word exams and we go into really high states of anxiousness. So it's looking at that and not being afraid to talk, again, especially with men, there's a huge kind of, I would call it a pandemic of men not talking. I still see it a lot. A lot of guys don't come to counseling, too scared to talk. It's not really a done thing, so just talk, talk, get out there. It's the best thing that you can do. We're not here to judge. There's no judgment going on. I just accept people for who they are.
I mean, that's so true. I mean, we came from a society of where the word therapy was taboo.
Mm.
People were afraid to mention it. Now everybody's got a therapist. Even therapists have therapists.
Yeah.
And you're right. We need to become a society that's not afraid to talk, not afraid to share our emotions, because if you think about it, we're all bottled up inside. We have all these emotions we're holding inside. And I think that's what drives a lot of anger and a lot of angst in a lot of people is they're holding all these emotions in, trying to be something and trying to hold themselves together. And what happens is it's like shaking a bottle of pop and opening it up, it explodes. And that's what causes all this anger and angst in people nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Just trying, you know, we're told that we have to fit in, that we have to dress a certain way, look a certain way. I always have this kind of metaphor that I will use with clients about, and I don't know why it's always a female, and it's a female on a tube train. Okay. If you get on a tube train, it's mainly full of people in suits. Okay. You're not gonna talk about any one of those people until this girl gets on, she gets on, she's dressed differently, she's got bright pink hair, she's got tattoos. That's the person you talk about. That's the person you remember, so it's good to be different. We all need to stand out a bit and say, do you know what? Sometimes we're not okay. Life is hard. It's difficult. We've all got bills to pay and work, there's so many pressures on us. So it's okay to sit down and go, do you know what? I just need someone to talk to for a few minutes, and actually hear me.
Yeah. Um, I have to say, it's been a fun, honest, and insightful conversation with you, showing up and everything else. Before I let you go, where can people find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, so if they want to kind of just go to the website, which is www.louderthanwordscounselling.com, and all the information is on there, or you can just Google counseling directory, put my name in, Kroy Ryder, and that will come up.
Perfect. We'll drop those links in the show notes so people can find you without spelling dyslexia wrong in Google. To everyone listening, wherever you are in neurodivergent journey, remember your brain isn't broken, your story matters, and you're definitely not alone. I'm Reed Miles, and that was Kroy Ryder, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kroy.
Thank you.